exact roommate stole my inheritance and disappeared. 3 years later, I saw her on TV and finally got my revenge. The morning I found my roommate Sarah's bedroom empty, I thought she'd finally gotten tired of our cramped apartment and moved back with her parents. The note on the kitchen counter seemed innocent enough. Emma had to leave suddenly. Family emergency. Thanks for everything. It wasn't until 3 days later, when I tried to access my inheritance account to pay for my grandfather's memorial service, that I discovered the devastating truth. The account that should have contained $180,000, money my grandfather had saved his entire life working double shifts at the steel mill, showed a balance of $47.33. My hands trembled as I called the bank. The representative's voice was clinically professional as she explained that someone with access to my personal information had initiated a series of wire transfers over the past 2 weeks. The last transfer had gone through just 4 days ago. Sarah, my roommate of 2 years, the person I'd trusted with my spare keys, my Netflix password, and apparently enough personal information to steal my entire future. I spent the next 6 months drowning in a bureaucratic nightmare. Police reports that led nowhere, bank investigations that crawled at a snail's pace, lawyers who wanted retainers I couldn't afford. The $47.33 barely covered my grandfather's cremation, let alone the proper memorial I'd promised him. The apartment felt haunted by her absence. I'd find myself staring at the spot where her desk used to be, remembering how she'd always insisted on handling our utility bills because she was better with numbers. How naive I'd been. She'd been studying my financial habits, learning my security questions during our late-night conversations about family and childhood pets. Eventually, I had to move back in with my parents. At 26, sleeping in my childhood bedroom felt like a regression into some alternate timeline where I'd never grown up. My mother would bring me tea and speak in hushed tones as if I were recovering from a terminal illness rather than grand theft. "Money can be replaced," she'd say, squeezing my shoulder. "Your grandfather would want you to move forward." But it wasn't just money. It was trust, security, the foundation I'd planned to build my adult life on. That inheritance was supposed to be the down payment on my first home, the safety net that would allow me to pursue my master's degree in social work. Instead, I was waiting tables at a chain restaurant, watching my dreams evaporate with each wasted month. The worst part was the isolation. How do you explain to friends that you've been financially destroyed by someone you'd considered family? The shame was suffocating. I'd lie awake wondering what signs I'd missed, what red flags I'd ignored while she was systematically planning to rob me blind. 3 years passed. I'd finally started to rebuild. A small apartment, a better job at a nonprofit, even some money in savings. The wound had scarred over, though it still ached on quiet nights when my mind wandered to what might have been. That's when I saw her. I was having dinner with my colleague Marcus when the restaurant's TV caught my attention. A local news segment about successful young entrepreneurs was playing, and there she was. Sarah Martinez, founder and CEO of Fresh Start Financial Consulting. The blood drained from my face as I watched her smile confidently at the interviewer, explaining how her company helped people optimize their financial potential and overcome past monetary setbacks. She was wearing an expensive blazer and sitting in what looked like a sleek downtown office. The chyron at the bottom of the screen read, "Local success story, 29-year-old builds six-figure business from scratch." From scratch. The irony was bitter as poison. "Emma, you look like you've seen a ghost," Marcus said, following my gaze to the screen. "Something like that," I whispered. That night, I couldn't sleep. I researched everything I could find about Sarah's business. Her LinkedIn profile claimed she'd started Fresh Start Financial 3 years ago. Coincidentally, right around the time she'd disappeared from my life. Her company website featured testimonials about her innovative approach to personal wealth management and her intuitive understanding of financial psychology. My grandfather's money had funded her entire life transformation. The old Emma might have wallowed in rage and self-pity, but 3 years of rebuilding myself from nothing had taught me patience, strategy, and the power of documentation. I'd learned these skills in my nonprofit work, helping vulnerable people navigate complex systems. Now I would use them for myself. I started by gathering evidence. Bank records I'd kept from the original investigation, screenshots of Sarah's new online presence. Most importantly, I reached out to other victims through online forums dedicated to financial fraud. I wasn't the only one she'd targeted. Through careful research, I discovered that Sarah had run similar schemes in two other cities before moving in with me. Always the same pattern: befriend someone with a significant inheritance or settlement, gain their trust, then disappear with their money. I found court records, police reports, and most crucially, three other victims willing to come forward. But I didn't want just legal justice. I wanted poetic justice. I spent weeks crafting my approach. Fresh Start Financial was built on Sarah's fabricated reputation as a trustworthy financial advisor. Her entire client base depended on believing she was ethical, successful, and transparent about her background. I started by creating a detailed timeline of her fraud activities, complete with documentation, photos, and victim testimonials. Then I built a simple website, The Real Sarah Martinez, a warning to potential clients. The site was clean, professional, and devastating. No emotional language or personal attacks, just facts, dates, and evidence. I included links to police reports, court documents, and statements from her other victims. Most importantly, I featured a side-by-side comparison of her current LinkedIn claims versus the documented timeline of her criminal activities. Then I waited for the perfect moment. Sarah had scheduled a live interview on the morning news show to discuss ethical wealth building strategies. The interview was promoted heavily on social media, with Fresh Start Financial encouraging clients to tune in and share the segment. On the morning of the broadcast, I launched my website and began sharing it strategically. I sent links to the news station's investigative journalism team, local business reporters, and the Better Business Bureau. I posted carefully worded comments on Fresh Start Financial's social media pages, not making accusations, but simply asking innocent questions. Has anyone verified Ms. Martinez's background claims? Followed by a link to public court records. The interview itself was excruciating to watch. Sarah sat there in her designer suit, discussing the importance of trust in financial relationships, completely unaware that her world was about to implode. By noon, the news station had pulled the interview from their website. By evening, Fresh Start Financial's social media pages were flooded with questions from concerned clients. By the end of the week, 3 major clients had publicly terminated their contracts. The local business journal ran a follow-up investigation that expanded on my research. Other news outlets picked up the story. Within a month, Fresh Start Financial was dead, and Sarah Martinez was facing criminal charges in multiple jurisdictions. But the real victory came 6 months later, when I received a call from the prosecutor's office. As part of a plea agreement, Sarah would be required to make full restitution to all her victims. The money my grandfather had spent 70 years saving was finally coming home. The check arrived on what would have been his 90th birthday. I didn't feel the triumphant satisfaction I'd expected. Instead, sitting in my small apartment with the restitution check in my hands, I felt something deeper and more complex. The money was important, yes. It meant I could finally pursue my master's degree, maybe even buy that house someday. But the real change was in me. 3 years earlier, I'd been naive enough to trust someone completely based on proximity and shared living space. The betrayal had shattered that innocence, but it had also forced me to develop skills I never knew I needed: research, patience, strategic thinking, and most importantly, the ability to help myself when no one else would. I thought about my grandfather, who'd worked his entire life for this money, never knowing it would one day teach his granddaughter that true security doesn't come from what you have, but from what you're capable of doing when everything is taken away. The next morning, I enrolled in graduate school and applied for a position with the White Collar Crime Victim Assistance Program. If my experience had taught me anything, it was that justice isn't something that happens to you. It's something you create, carefully and deliberately, with patience and evidence and an unshakable belief that the truth will eventually surface. Sarah Martinez stole my inheritance, but she couldn't steal what I'd learned in getting it back. In trying to destroy my future, she'd inadvertently taught me how to build a better one. Some lessons are expensive. This one cost me $180,000 and 3 years of my life. It was worth every penny.